There's a way things seem, and then there's a way things are. It seems a certain way when you and your significant other are in a fight. It might seem like you don't love each other, but is that the way that things are? There might seem to be a certain vibe from a coworker when y'all are in an argument or they're yelling at you. Does that mean they don't care about you? Is that the way things are? There's a way things seem when you're accused and have pretty solid evidence, allegedly, of stealing signs. But is that the way that things are? What does that actually mean? We'll talk about that here. Welcome into the Hard Count. This is the People's College Football Show, talking ball and only ball every single day on this wonderful show, the Hard Count, that is on the platform, the On3 YouTube channel. We're glad to have y'all here, man. If you're new to the show, it's Prediction Tuesday. And that is a pretty true to form kind of label as we pick the games for Week 9 on this Tuesday, October 24th, 2023, the very last one in the history of the earth. So we're going to enjoy it. And we're going to enjoy it the best way we know how. That is talking college football, talking a little world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Georgia, Florida, in Jacksonville. Going to be a lot of fun. Florida now, don't look, but they're playing some pretty good football. The line is right around Georgia with 2 scores. We'll take a look at that one. Give you our prediction, give you our preview for that one. Also, Oregon going to Utah. Man, this is just like the Pac-12. It's been a party all season long in that conference. Arguably, the best brand of football being played right now is on the Pac-12 or on the West Coast, rather. That's a very big one when it comes to determining that conference race. In my mind, that is essentially an elimination game for that conference title race. Not easy to go to Salt Lake. Salt Lake will be rocking. Utah coming off a huge win over USC. Oregon hasn't really had a break since they lost to Washington. Where do we fall in that game? We'll give you our pick. Also, Duke at Louisville. Now, this is a game that we've seen many times when it comes to March Madness and the college basketball primetime matchups. Both of these, in my opinion, and we're biased here, so take this as you will, those are football schools now. We have claimed them as our own in the college football landscape. Those are football schools. They will play a football game in L&N Stadium this coming Saturday. We'll give you our pick there. Then Tennessee at Kentucky. This is a response kind of bowl, if you will. Kentucky lost the last 2. Tennessee was up on Alabama, ended up losing that game, kind of trying to stabilize their whole operation now, coming off the heels of that loss. Who responds better? Who responds in the sense they get a win? We'll talk about it. We'll give you our pick in that one. We're glad to have you here. To those of y'all that are new, we talk ball and only ball. I said at the top of this show, we preface every single show this way because it's important we kind of get our mind right before we jump into talking college football. You got a lot going on. I've heard from a lot of y'all this past week via direct message on my social channels at Jody Piquel, Twitter and Instagram. A lot of y'all telling me your program wins, and that's been a lot of fun to hear about those. And to kind of round that thought out, essentially just telling me good things that are happening to y'all in y'all's life. Because we talk about the show as a community, as a team, as a program, like a college football program. And by nature of what y'all have told me, some of y'all have gone through some extremely intense personal circumstances. Some of y'all have had some intense personal wins, and we salute y'all for it. But what I want to say is you have a lot going on. Put that to the side right now, whether it's work, whether it's personal, whether it's stress from school, whatever it is, put that to the side because we're just going to talk college football right now and have this kind of be just a meeting of sorts of this program. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. We got a lot of predictions to make here. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about what's going on at Michigan. I prefaced it a little bit in the open to this live show. There's a way things seem, and there's a way that things are. So here's what we know. Here's the latest right now when it comes to the whole situation around sign stealing gate in Ann Arbor. Michigan staffer Connor Stalions, who's already been suspended, there's a report by Pete Thamel that he bought 30-plus tickets to Big Ten football games over the past 3 seasons. Now, I don't think Stalions is going to all those games, but different people, the assumption is different people within the Michigan program are going to these games, and they are reported, apparently, as recording the sidelines at these football games to take the signs and then obviously utilize that for Michigan during their preparation. So that's kind of the way that things look right now, and that is the report. There's no way around this now. This is just a very bad look. There's no excuse. Like, even if you're a Michigan fan at this point in time, it is hard to make an excuse given this report and given this information that we have at the time right now that there wasn't something going on. right? Like, you don't buy 30-plus tickets to Big Ten football games over the past 3 seasons if there's not, like, kind of a system in place there and if there's not an effort to maybe gain a competitive advantage there. So that's probably what happened, right? Like, I don't think we're going out on a limb saying, yeah, that's probably the reality of the situation right now in Ann Arbor. Also, a very bad look for Jim Harbaugh, because as the head coach, you are responsible both just philosophically and when it comes to the ruling within the NCAA of what goes on within your football program from a staff to a player standpoint. Like, I think it's actually specifically written out in relation to your staff, but we've seen coaches be held responsible for their players as well. In this situation, bad look for Harbaugh because of the length of time it went on. This wasn't, by nature of this report, like a new thing that's happening right now. So what do we make of this? I talked about it a little bit when this news broke, but I think 2 things can be true. The first is, this is against the rules. There should be a punishment, right? There should be consequences for breaking the rules. I think we're all pretty much on board with that train of thought. Now, what that punishment is, I would probably lean more towards the slap on the wrist approach as opposed to bowl bans and, wins being vacated and things like that. Like, that would feel a little bit more extreme than what we need to do for this situation. Because I think the other thing that's true is, while this is against the rules, Michigan has still been dominant. And from what I've seen from Michigan over the past couple of seasons, it had nothing to do with signs. Like, it had everything to do with that Joe Moore award-winning offensive line the past couple of years. Because here's the reality. It might look a certain way with having these signs being stolen and all that, but, like, when we're running power downhill at you, whether you're on offense and you're running the power or you're on defense trying to stop it, it doesn't matter what the sign was. It's a matter of, are you man enough to stand in the hole, take on that block, or deliver that block, and have that be the way that things go on that play? Are you able to withstand physically what happens between the white lines? Because I'll say this too. I would be wildly surprised if anybody on the Michigan roster had any idea something like this was going on. Like, obviously, there's a sense of preparation from the coaching staff, getting guys in position to be more successful on play to play. I get that. But to make the leap to say Michigan had signs, therefore they've been good these last couple of years, we're reaching, y'all. We're reaching if that's the train of thought we're trying to go with here. And I understand folks that live in Columbus, Ohio, and folks that live in State College, Pennsylvania, and anyone else in Big Ten country, you feel some kind of way about this. I don't blame you. But I think when you turn on those games the last couple of years, there's no question who's winning those games. Do the coaches have an impact? For sure. But the players on the field is who's winning those games the last couple of years for Michigan. That's why I don't have an issue with this the way that I think some people might. There's a way things seem, and there's a way things are. The way it seems that Michigan cheated, that's not untrue. But the way things are is Michigan is just the better football team in the majority of these games they play. Should there be punishment? Absolutely. I don't want to come across like I'm excusing this. But I also can't help but feel just a little bit like, man, is this really that big a deal? Do we really have to make this a headline? And I get it's Michigan. I get it's Jim Harbaugh. That will make a headline in itself. So we got to talk about it. We're talking about it right now. But are we really going to just hang Michigan out to dry here because they took a couple of signs and tried to gain a competitive advantage that way? Other thing I would say, too, there's a reason this isn't illegal at the NFL level. All right? Like, I understand, like, this isn't with the college rules, but there's a reason that you can do this in the NFL. And my gut is it isn't that much of a competitive advantage, the way that I feel about this. So, how does this impact Jim Harbaugh? I have no idea. No idea. There's a thought out there that maybe this is the NCAA's push to kind of get him out of the collegiate ranks, get him to the NFL. Maybe so. Maybe so. Like, I don't know what's going to happen there. I would say that the NCAA is extremely slow on these things. I personally would be a bit surprised if anything were to happen this season to Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. But in terms of direct impact in the immediate future, I think they've kicked the hornet's nest at Michigan. And I've gone on record and said this a couple of times. Like, Michigan already thrives in that underdog kind of role, that chip on their shoulder kind of approach. If they didn't have a chip on their shoulder big enough before now, I promise you, they have a boulder now on both shoulders if you're Michigan at this point in time. Because the Harbaugh suspension and everything with the Burger Gate made you feel some kind of way with that investigation. That was kind of the way the players felt by nature of wearing the free Harbaugh shirts. But now there's accusations that are pretty serious, and there's some pretty serious evidence against it. But Michigan probably feels a little bit like people have it out for them. Whether that's true or not, that's probably the feeling in Ann Arbor. And there's no more questions about what they're going to do on the field. So I don't think you take those questions from previous seasons and say, well, everyone's doubting us on the field. That's not the chip on the shoulder mentality for Michigan anymore. Now for Michigan, it's, okay, people don't want to see us succeed. That's their feeling internally. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's their feeling internally. And so I think they have all the fuel they need to really go on a tear here. They've been dominant to this point in the year. I think this is only adding fuel to the fire. What it means for the future, no idea. Again, I hope that it's not a thing where we're just vacating wins and doing the bowl ban thing. Like, that would just feel like a very useless and stupid exercise, in my opinion. But for this season, again, this is all the juice they need to go forward. So that's the latest right now when it comes to this whole Connor Stalions sign-stealing stuff with Michigan. We'll keep an eye on it. As things formulate, we'll give you more and more of our thoughts on this situation. But again, I would lean more towards a slap on the wrist than anything more extreme when it comes to consequences. And let's not pretend that Michigan has been good because of this whole sign-stealing operation. All right? So that's what's going on with Michigan. Hey, appreciate everybody tuned in live. Got a lot of y'all dialed in, man. Get in the live chat. Let us know your thoughts, concerns, feelings around this situation. A great place to do that as well is on my social channels, on Instagram and on Twitter, at JD Piquel. A little bit later in the show, going to get to some of y'all's thoughts, questions, concerns via the live chat. Nick Brake's going to jump on here, and we'll kind of unpack that together. So get those in now so we can answer those in the most efficient fashion possible. All right, also, good news. The Hard Count brought to y'all by Prize Picks. If you've been tuned in for any length of time, you know that we've been doing Prize Picks every single week in terms of the squares that we like, the plays that we like. Redeem code JD for 100% deposit match when you sign up to $100. So you put down $20, redeem code JD, they'll match you with $20. Good deal. You got $40 to play with. Life is good because if you've been tailing us, good things have been happening on the Prize Picks front. Quick overview of what Prize Picks is for y'all that are new to the program. Daily fantasy. You're able to pick different squares and do either a power play where you have to get every single projection right, or a flex play. You get a percentage of them right. You get a certain percent of your entry back. We did a flex play this past weekend, and it hit. All right, so to recap it for you, Roman Wilson, half a receiving touchdown. We took the more there. Roman Wilson is a walking receiving touchdown. That felt like a free square. Marvin Harrison Jr., half a receiving touchdown. Wasn't as confident in this one. Two really good corners for Penn State. They were content to play man coverage. We were on the sideline right near that pylon when Marvin Harrison Jr. housed that touchdown to put the game on ice. If you haven't seen that yet, check that out on my Instagram. Got a real good view of that from the field level. The last square we had this did not hit was Nick Singleton with 12.5 fantasy points. We were new to the fantasy point squares when it comes to Prize Picks. We took the more here. We like to see good things happen to good people. We make no apologies about it. Nick Singleton did not achieve that 12.5 fantasy point mark. So the good thing, though, we didn't do a power play here. We did a flex play, meaning we just needed 2 out of 3 of these to come to fruition to make something back from our entry. So you made 1.25 times your entry if you tailed us there. And if you faded us, bad day to be a hater. Party rolls on. So we appreciate Prize Picks. Again, redeem code JD, 100% deposit match, up to $100. We have a lot of fun doing this during the season. Get in on the action with us. Make sure you're dialed in there. And a great way to do that, download the Prize Picks app, the best way to play, in my humble opinion. Had a lot of fun getting into that this season. A lot of good fun to be had. All right, now, it's time. Prediction Tuesday. Let's get after it. Here we go. Whew, feels like we're running a no-huddle offense here. A little bit of butterflies. We jump into week 9. We're right around the 2/3 way of the season, or a third left of the season, right around the 2/3 mark of the season. Okay. World's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville. It's Georgia. It's Florida. We say Georgia first because they won the game last year. Georgia favored by 14.5 points. CBS now. The SEC theme turned that thing all the way up when it comes on. 3:30 Eastern. Like I already said, Jacksonville, Florida. What is on the line here? What's at stake for both teams? For Georgia, man, the mission is the same. Same as 2021. Same as 2022. It's national title or bust. That's the standard. They're playing to it right now. Now, the biggest thing I'm watching here for Georgia is this new spot for this Georgia team in 2023. Because 2022, that team isn't there anymore. This is a team that has some production back from that team for sure, but Carson Beck, I think personally this may be the biggest spot for him to this point in the year. Now you're saying, JD, what about the game at Auburn? It's a big spot. The game against Kentucky in Athens, that's a big spot. It's a ranked team. But I think rivalry game in a neutral site, expect that place to be on fire. I'm curious to see how they respond. Also, to turn the intensity knob up a notch, Brock Bowers. They will be without him. That's pretty much been the headline the last couple of weeks for Georgia since that Vanderbilt game. How do they look? How does the rest of this roster rise to the occasion to try and make up for the loss of Brock Bowers? I'm not just talking about the offensive side of the ball. Anytime you lose a generational talent, an Avenger, if you will, wearing number 19 playing tight end for Georgia, it's going to take a village to be able to carry a little bit more to get things done for Georgia. So how do they respond in this spot? I cannot wait to see. Really quickly, make sure you're subscribed right here. College football, only college football every single day. If you're watching this prediction, it's from our live show on Prediction Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. The good news, if you missed it, you can tune in next week on Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. We're also live Wednesday and Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. So get in here, make sure you're subscribed. We don't want you to miss a minute of what we got going on right here on the Hard Count on the On3 YouTube channel. We appreciate y'all in advance for being dialed in. All right, when it comes to Florida, think about it this way, man. If Florida wins this football game, this would be the album cover for them for 2023. Like, yes, you'd be at 6 wins. Yes, you would hit on the over-under win total of 5.5 wins preseason. You're already at 5 right now. But if you beat Georgia, we talked about it in our early look video yesterday of this matchup, I think that would just infuse even more juice to what they have going on the recruiting trail. I think it would infuse a ton of belief into the Billy Napier regime in Gainesville. And I think, quite frankly, when it comes to trajectory of this program, like, you would look at Florida completely differently if they find a way to take down the back-to-back national champs. Now, Georgia also started slow the last couple of games for the most part, outside of that Kentucky game. We'll talk about that in just a second. For Florida, though, it feels like, to me at least, there is a real quiet confidence within that locker room. They know what's being said. They know how people feel about Florida and the feeling around Billy Napier as a head coach and the feeling about Graham Mertz when he transferred from Wisconsin. To this point in the year, all they've done, in my humble opinion, is overachieve and prove people wrong. That win over South Carolina, coming back from 10 in the fourth quarter, I think provided a ton of confidence that they already probably were on the verge of. But now I think it's kind of starting to reach a boiling point. And it's reaching a boiling point at the perfect time with this Georgia game. So some things we're watching on this one, man. What happens in the downhill battle, especially when Georgia has the football? Because to be real, man, we're breaking down this game. That Florida-Kentucky game is just burned in my mind. The snapshot is burned in my mind of Ray Davis running for almost 300 yards and Kentucky pulling the guard left, pulling the guard right, running power pretty much till they didn't feel like it anymore. And Florida did a very poor job, they would tell you that, in fitting that kind of play and approaching that play with physicality. So for Georgia, I'm doing the math here, you're without your best pass catcher in Brock Bowers. Georgia has been a pass-first operation for the most part this season, throwing the ball 37 times a game. But you wonder if a game like this, with that kind of resume on tape for Florida, if they don't go to being a more downhill operation. Hey, we got some pretty good players up front. Hey, maybe we haven't been the deepest we've ever been at running back, but we still feel pretty good about what we can do moving the line of scrimmage. If Florida is able to be aggressive and redeem that Kentucky performance, well, then you put the game back on Carson Beck. Again, big spot for him. He's played well to this point, but a very big spot, and put the pressure on those other pass catchers. I'm not saying they can't get it done, but I'm saying if you're Florida, you want to make sure you stop the run at all costs. I think Austin Armstrong will be very aggressive in doing that, because if Georgia can get downhill consistently, everything else opens up. At the very least, you have less pressure on Carson Beck to be the guy to convert on 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 9. Like, you're probably living in a more manageable 3rd down situation. Also, you wear down a defense. So if we get things rolling early, we're 5 yards here, we're 6 yards here for Georgia. Eventually, you just kind of keep tapping away, and then the dam breaks in the fourth quarter. That would not be a good situation for Florida. Eventually, as well, you could see Florida overcommit if they're not able to have success stopping the run, and then deep plays open up downfield. Dominic Lovett gets to eat. Ra Thomas gets to eat. These pass catchers for Georgia then have an easier time kind of getting into a rhythm. So the downhill battle will be crucial for Florida. You want to make this a game where Carson Beck and these pass catchers have to answer the call to action. Even though Carson Beck's been good this year, you want to make it a thing where he has to have a little bit more weight on his shoulders than he already does without Brock Bowers in the lineup. Now, something to watch within that matchup, Oscar Delp is stepping in relief of Brock Bowers here. He's a really talented young player for Georgia, playing tight end for them. What he does what he does in the passing game will be big, but I think what he does blocking here will also be crucial. Georgia typically been a 12 personnel team playing with 2 tight ends. They ask their tight ends to do a lot when it comes to the blocking game, running the football. I don't think you'll see as much 12, but I do think you will see a fair amount of 11 with Oscar Delp being that tight end for them and trying to add in and move the line of scrimmage. So a very, very big day for number 4 there. Keep an eye on him. Another matchup to watch here. Defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong against Carson Beck. Kind of the testing of his composure, if you will. If you're Florida, in a spot like this where you're a 2-touchdown dog, it's a neutral site, it's a rivalry game, I think defensively you swing for the chin early. And what I mean by that is I think you have zero interest in making this a strictly matchups kind of football game. Hey, our guys versus your guys, mano-a-mano. Let's play you honest as can be. Let's roll. Georgia, quite frankly, I think they're too talented for that. I think Austin Armstrong, that's not his MO anyway to play mano-a-mano like that. I think they want to dial it up. I think they want to be confusing. I think they want to get after Carson Beck because in a game like this is a classic risk it in exchange for the biscuit sort of situation if you're Florida. I think to win this football game, you need to win the turnover battle. You need to find a way to create extra possessions. And even better, if you can rattle Carson Beck in this spot and kind of make them have to recalibrate on that sideline and get your momentum going if you're Florida and start fast, who knows what happens. That kind of opens Pandora's box for this whole game. Imagine a situation where you get a strip sack, within the 20-yard line. If you're Florida going in, you score, you're up 7-0, you put the game back on Carson Beck. Where's he at emotionally? Where's he at psychologically? Because remember now, neutral site. So there's a fair amount of Georgia fans. I promise you a fair amount of Florida fans will be at this game too. Plays could get a little bit rowdy. We'll see. Belief starts to grow for Florida. I'm just saying that would be a world you want to live in. I don't think it's a thing where you just let the game come to you if you're Austin Armstrong and that Florida defense. Again, that's not their MO anyway. Now, the risk here involved with that, if you swing and you miss, just think about it from a boxing standpoint. Anytime I throw a haymaker and I just whiff completely, well, where am I at? My chin is exposed. Same thing for the Florida defense. If we try and be tricky and we try and bring, an extra man from the secondary to blitz Carson Beck and he sees that right away, I said it before, diagnose like a doctor, deliver like a midwife. If Carson Beck does that, then you have a chunk play, then he gets rhythm, then they start to roll, then you're behind the sticks defensively. Then that could kind of be the slippery slope avalanche sort of mentality if you're Florida. So that's something to watch for. I think it's worth it. I think you have to swing big if you're Florida in a spot like this, but I'm curious to see how that goes in the early going especially. Because to be real, y'all, the first half is extremely important for Florida. I'm not going to say they don't have the ability to chase you down if they do get down, because ask South Carolina, Florida can come back from a lead, especially in the fourth quarter when they came back from 10 against South Carolina. But for me, Florida is built to play with the lead. We talk about it a lot whenever we break down Florida games. Florida wants to play with controlling the tempo of a game. They want to be able to play out in front and pound the rock downhill and allow Graham Mertz to have some throws on the perimeter. And I think a big part of this for Florida with controlling tempo and being able to run the football will be Eugene Wilson. We've talked about him a lot on this show in different breakdowns, but in this game especially, I think you want to get the defense for Georgia flowing just a little bit, want to find a way to maybe lighten that box up a little bit and put pressure on the perimeter of this Georgia defense. And the best way to do that is getting the ball to Eugene Wilson in space. Because if you can mess with the eyes of those linebackers and get them rolling one way or the other, and then you can run a play back the other way with whichever back you want to getting downhill, then good things start to happen with Florida. Then you start to get a roll offensively. Then you control the tempo, much like that Tennessee game, if you want to think back to that if you're a Florida fan. So when it comes to this game, man, I think Florida is going to connect on some swings. I really do. I think in a spot like this, there's a lot of pride in this team for Florida. I think there is a lot of attitude built in with this team for Florida. I think there's a lot of buy-in built in with this team for Florida, and we've seen that multiple times. Now, with that same thing being said, I think Georgia has a real sense of urgency now with no Brock Bowers in the lineup, and we've seen Georgia, once they get a little bit of something to chase, once they get down to an Auburn or down to a South Carolina, or they see a team like Kentucky who's ranked, like once they see something to go and chase and they have that urgency, I think they're extremely dangerous. I think no Brock Bowers and a rivalry spot here creates that urgency for them, and Kirby Smart is the best in the country, if not the world, at getting his team ready to play when they have something to chase. I think Carson Beck plays big. I think he plays efficient football. I think Georgia wins this football game. I'll take Georgia to win, Florida to cover. I think the final score is 34-24 dogs, and the meaning here for Georgia is you just clear another hurdle and you find a way to kind of put this operation together without Brock Bowers. This is your first chance to see Georgia 2.0, feels like the wrong verbiage, but new Georgia without Brock Bowers, how they kind of find a way to have everybody else add in and carry a little bit more to move this thing forward, which is, seemingly the Georgia way, the way they've gone about things the last couple of years. Now for Florida, even if they lose this football game, the eye test here is very, very important. Think back to the Auburn game. When Auburn played Georgia extremely tough in Jordan-Hare, it was back and forth, came down to the final drive. Georgia found a way to come back and win in dramatic fashion, but Auburn had the football with a chance to win that game. Think about how we talked about Auburn after that game. Talked about the trajectory, right? Talked about, well, Hugh Freeze is the new coach there. He's there for a reason. If that's where Auburn's at right now, give them a couple of years, they'll be okay. It's year 2 for Billy Napier, so that conversation probably changes just a little bit, but I think the same thing can be true. If Florida tests Georgia just a little bit and makes it a thing where, hey, you see the growth, you see where this thing's headed, the measuring stick here for Florida against their rival, we could be saying some good things about Florida even if they end up losing this game. Now, there's no moral victories. We understand that. The people in Gainesville understand that. But I think there is a lot to still take away regardless of the final score in Jacksonville. So that's Georgia, Florida. I can't wait to watch that one. Enjoy that SEC theme while we have it with SEC games. It's going to be a lot of fun. Rivalry football, man. That's what this is all about. Rivalry football. Love to see it. Love to see it. Hey, shout out everybody watching live right now. We appreciate y'all enormously. We don't shout this out enough, but everyone listening to the podcast, man, we love y'all. We love y'all. Whether you're driving around doing carpool with the kids, maybe you're studying. We've had a lot of y'all reach out and say you listen at work. However you listen, whenever you listen, via the podcast on Spotify or on Apple, we're glad to have you a part of this thing, man. Y'all are some diehards. You can't catch the live show, that's fine, but you're dialed in with the podcast, and we're glad to have you a part of this operation. All right, let's keep a good thing going now. If everyone who's watching right now live could hit that thumbs up icon under the video, we would appreciate it greatly and be well over 100 likes. So we'll give you all a quick second to do that. Thank you very much. Roll, party, roll. Speaking of a party, man, there has been a party going on all season long on the West Coast. And the Pac-12 the last couple of years, has the reputation been amazing? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Like, they haven't really put teams consistently in the college football playoff, and it is what it is. And so this is the last year of the Pac-12 as we know it. Both these teams will be in new conferences here sooner rather than later. Oregon to the Big Ten, Utah to the Big 12. But they're gonna keep on partying before they turn the lights off. They're playing arguably the best brand of football is the Pac-12 in the entire college football landscape. So we got 3:30 Eastern on Fox, Oregon at Utah. Oregon favored by right around a touchdown. I mentioned that time, 3:30 Eastern. If you want to add in some caffeine just for the pure nostalgia of Pac-12 After Dark, be my guest. No caffeine required for this one. It's a no caffeine special out there on the West Coast, so we appreciate them for that. For Oregon, man, it is fight or flight mode. They want to win the Pac-12. They want to make the college football playoff. You got one loss now. The mulligan is gone. You go to Salt Lake City in a tough spot against a tough physical football team coming off a very big win over USC as Utah. How do you respond? I think this is potentially, and our good friend J-Hop from Scoop Duck echoed this sentiment on the Roundtable channel for On 3 yesterday, and it came out this morning. This is potentially the most difficult game left on Oregon's schedule the rest of the regular season by nature of how things have developed in Los Angeles. So, for Oregon now, mission is the same. Like I said, fight or flight mode for them when it comes to their college football playoff and Pac-12 title aspirations. Utah, Feels like they just got some new juice with that win in LA. And it felt like it was a huge reminder for the rest of the country that, oh yeah, that's the back-to-back Pac-12 champs. That's the team that took USC to the woodshed in the Pac-12 title game on a Friday night last season. It looks different, sure. Cam Rising, he's not out there on the field. He's on the sideline. He's not going to play the rest of the season. Yeah, I understand that. Bryson Barnes playing quarterback for you. But it's that same brand of Utah football we've come to expect from Kyle Whittingham. I said this right after they beat USC at my Twitter page, at JD Piquel. I said, I don't think there is remotely a percentage chance that Kyle Whittingham ever leaves Utah from where I'm standing, but there's a lot of schools that would be, one, lucky to have him, and two, would like to have him, I'm sure, with some potential vacancies across the country. With that being said, they're 100% behind Bryson Barnes. Kyle Whittingham has this thing rolling again. I think he's very happy in Salt Lake City, and this would be another signature win should they find a way to take down Oregon. Both teams very physical in this game. Both like to play in the trenches. Both do great running the football. Both do great stopping the run. So when it comes to a matchup of sorts for me, I'm curious how Oregon does on the perimeter and how Utah defends Oregon's perimeter game in this matchup. Oregon averaging 6.2 yards a carry, number one in the country. Utah allowing less than 3 yards a carry. Good for top 15, top 20 in the country. Now, Oregon's rush total is so high, they run at that yards per carry number because they do a great job getting defenses off balance. A big way they do that, to go back to the point of this bullet point, they do a great job putting the ball on the edge and making defenses run sideline to sideline. And then once they get you off balance, they do a great job going north and south. That's who Oregon is. That's who they have been. So if Oregon gets in a rhythm and they get that defense flowing, we're going to see what we've seen from Oregon. Bo Nix dropping back to pass, loosening up the wing, no pun intended because they're the Ducks, and he's just dropping bombs. He's throwing missiles. There's big plays happening. The other side of that could also be in the run game. If the defense starts flowing, get a linebacker running to the sideline, that's great. We got inside zone going the other way. Bucky Irving, sounds like he's back healthy for this one. He's a problem when he gets rolling downhill. The reason why I talk about the perimeter game is because I could very easily see the trenches being a stalemate with how good Utah is and how good Oregon is. So I think it could be a horizontal game to go vertical if you're Oregon, whether it's running or passing. So how Utah defends that is crucial. Because to be real now, we haven't seen Oregon be in a spot where they don't have the run game. And again, I think the perimeter pass game, perimeter run game sets up that run game north and south. But if Utah does a good job on the edges of this Oregon offense, and it becomes a game in a phone booth where Utah is able to kind of just hunker down and be able to get after that Oregon run game and take that away, we haven't seen Oregon in that spot just yet. That would be new territory for Oregon. And I promise you, that is not a spot you want to be in a raucous Salt Lake City against a physical, rock-solid identity outfit of Utah. You don't want to have to figure it out in that spot. That's where things could get very, very intriguing. Something else I'm watching in this game now, a name to know, and a name that you probably already know because you're a college football junkie and because you probably enjoy football games that go around at 10:30 Eastern, Sione Vaki for Utah. If you Googled him right now, he would come up as a safety playing for Utah. He does play safety, but he has been just the jumper cables, if you will, to that Utah offense. They have found a way to get him the football in space. He's been a wildcat for them, playing running back and being in that quarterback position rather in the wildcat sort of formation. He's been a problem in the pass game. Just ask USC about that. He's been a weapon for them. He has breathed life into this Utah offense. So for Oregon now, the second level of that defense, especially the linebackers, they're going to have a very, very big assignment this upcoming weekend trying to defend him because the wildcat offense is so tricky to defend. A couple of reasons. I'll go through them really quick. First, you more often than not have a motion going with it. It's an option for that running back playing quarterback. So whatever decision you make, typically, you're wrong. If you want to rush outside with that jet sweep, well, we're going to run the ball right up at you. If you want to sit on that running back playing quarterback, sit on the wildcat quarterback and try and make sure he doesn't hurt you, well, they have a chance then to give it and circle the defense. The other part of this is you add in a blocker whenever you have the wildcat offense. Because think about it this way. When you're a quarterback in a normal offense, you're not blocking anybody. Like, you just hand the ball off, and most times you're watching or you're giving a play action look or whatever. But when you have the Wildcat offense, quarterback's running the football, who is, again, already a running back at this point in time. So we have an extra blocker, or at the very least some more window dressing with that jet sweep going on, to where you have less numbers defensively to account for the blockers that Utah has. So with that out of the way, going to be very important for Oregon in that second level, those linebackers, to play really fundamentally sound. If you get outside of your gap at all, that's all Sione Vaki needs to get north and south and to create some explosive plays for this Utah offense. Also going to be important for this third level of the Oregon defense to really swarm, especially when they go sideline to sideline. Now, you don't want to swarm too much and overcompensate, and that's something to watch here. Does Oregon overcompensate when it comes to Sione Vaki, and he's kind of the decoy, and then Bryson Barnes gets an easy downfield throw to whoever you want to insert there? Something to watch for. But if Oregon's able to defend Sione Vaki and he doesn't start cooking, well, then you put the game back on Bryson Barnes. Bryson Barnes, now, to be fair, played really well against USC. Probably had the best game of his season against USC. Was good enough to win. Had a game-winning scramble to set up that field goal. Like, he played awesome. Over the course of the season, though, he's completing less than 60% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. If you had to pick a way, or you had to pick a player, rather, to beat you if you're Oregon, I think you would pick Bryson Barnes. But again, if you can't stop Sione Vaki, tie up those laces, buckle that chin strap, because we got a track meet. And you ask Oregon to match scores on the road in a raucous environment against a tough defense. Like, I don't think you really want to live that way if you're Oregon. Here's the big question for me. We talk about it a lot on this show because I think it's extra important when it comes to the collegiate game, and that's all we talk about here, so that's a good deal for us. Whose emotional tank is better positioned in this football game? Because Utah, after that emotional win over USC, we saw it this past weekend with Washington and with Oklahoma and with Texas, all 3 teams coming off emotional games. They didn't play their best football the next week. It's very tough to hit the reset button, especially when you have 18 to 22-year-olds that, oh, by the way, also have to go to class and have to juggle school along with being a Division I collegiate athlete. Okay, so there's that part of it. For Utah, at least, how do they respond to the big win over USC? Are they able to hit the reset button and play their best ball at home against a really good Oregon team? Going to need it. For Oregon, they had that close loss to Washington on the road, 3-point loss. You miss a field goal. Everyone's questioning Dan Lanning going on 4th down. We already said we love that here. Go for it. Live how you live, Dan Lanning. They beat Washington State last week. My question, though, Oregon really hasn't had a break. Like, there was no bye week that was there to save Oregon after that Washington game. Very emotional, draining game, you would imagine, if you're in Eugene. Great win over Washington State, who I thought was sneaky to begin with. But now you go back on the road and you play, again, I keep saying this, but like gritty, physical, whatever verbiage you want to throw at Utah, they are exactly that, and then some. It's going to test you. It's going to push you to the limit a little bit. Now, I'm going to pick Oregon to win this football game, and here's why. I think Oregon is battle-tested, and I think we've seen them over the course of Dan Lanning's time there have a great response every single week, regardless of what happened the week before. He does a great job getting that team focused up. I'm not saying Kyle Whittingham doesn't, but I'm saying I trust the veteran experience here with Oregon when it comes to Bo Nix leading that operation, when it comes to Dan Lanning getting his team ready to play. Teams take on the persona. If you've watched this show for a length of time, you know what I'm saying. Teams take on the persona of their leadership. Dan Lanning, I think he is tough as it comes as a head coach, and I think they get their team ready to play. I think there's also, to be fair, schematically, more ways for Oregon to win this football game than Utah. I think if Oregon needs to throw the football, they can throw the football. If Oregon has to make it a rock fight, they have to run the ball, I think they can do that as well. Probably a little bit better than a lot of people would like to think. So we'll take Oregon to win. I'm going to put the score at 33-24. I wouldn't touch the spread. I understand Oregon's getting a touchdown. They're at Utah. That, to me, is fishy. Spider senses going off. Do not touch the spread, in my humble opinion. We put out our best bets every single week exclusively on my Instagram page, at JDPikel. You will not find Oregon at Utah on there. I promise you that. Now, a win for Oregon would mean another hurdle cleared, would mean you continue to keep those college football playoff aspirations alive. And I think it would be a big confidence booster as well. I don't think they need a ton of confidence in Eugene, but to get a win on the road against a team that has been the class of the Pac-12 the last couple of years, I think that would go a long way for them in terms of proving even more so internally who they are. So that's Oregon at Utah. That's going to be must-see TV. No caffeine required, but if you want to have a Red Bull while you watch it just for nostalgia purposes, we understand, we salute you, we support you. The Pac-12, man, it is so fun. I know that this isn't something that necessarily just drives traffic crazy because, it just kind of is what it is when it comes to what time this show is on, but like, the Pac-12 is awesome. The Pac-12, again, I say this a lot, it is the equivalent of throwing a party before you got to sell the house. Hey, we got one more season here, y'all. Let's do it big. And they're doing it big right now, and that game I don't think will be any exception. Hey, appreciate y'all. Well over 100 likes. We have 2 more games to break down. I'm going to get to y'all's questions and your thoughts in just a little bit here, but make sure you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed as well to this show, to this channel, so you don't miss a minute of what we got going on right here. We will be live again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. Tell a friend. Bring a friend. Heck, bring your family. Doesn't matter who you bring. Just make sure they're watching so we can all be dialed in together through this beautiful thing that is the college football season. Okay, 3:30 Eastern. ESPN. Duke at Louisville. Louisville -4. LNN Stadium. Will be going berserk. Louisville has a nice little path to the ACC title game by nature of what happened last week with North Carolina. And they're looking to get that bad taste out of their mouth as Louisville after the bye week. They lost to Pitt. The ACC race, man, I said it once, I'll say it again. They are very much so in the hunt. We gave you our mid-season, postseason predictions. Like after week 6, we kind of hit the reset button on our predictions from the preseason and said, okay, here's how we see the conference title race shaping up. Here's how we see the college football playoff race shaping up. We have Louisville in Charlotte playing Florida State. A win here would be huge. Do we pick them to win this game? We'll tell you in just a second. But that environment, I think, will be electric. And there's a lot of excitement right now around that football team, as there always is when it comes to Louisville, Kentucky. Should be a great game. Now, for Duke, on the ropes a little bit. On the ropes a little bit because lost to Florida State last week, and you felt like you played well enough to win that game, especially when it came to what you did in the first half. Now, Riley Leonard is a guy that we got to talk about when it comes to this matchup. Similar theme to last week. Mike Elko says he's day-to-day. Now, what does day-to-day mean? I don't know. The expectation would be, even if Riley Leonard does play in this football game, what percentage effectiveness are you getting out of him? Because he is a dual-threat quarterback. One of the things that he does the best is running the football. So for the sake of this conversation, we'll kind of break it down if he does play and if he doesn't play. But this is a game in which your back is against the wall. We said it at the top of this show. These two schools are barreling towards efforts to be in that ACC title game. This would be a lot for the ACC title efforts when it comes to Duke. Kind of the back against the wall. Get yourself back on track with a win would be the hope there for Duke. And can they do it without their quarterback? We'll see if they even have to, but we'll talk about it right now. Big thing to watch in this game. Duke's effectiveness defending Jamari Thrash. Now, if you don't know who Jamari Thrash is, that's okay. He has been phenomenal for Louisville, playing receiver for them. He has been the best offensive weapon for them to this point. And Duke, to be real, didn't look horrible against Florida State when it came to them throwing the football last week, but still, I think they're left a lot to be desired. And I think the interesting thing when I watched that game back was the amount of space that Duke gave Florida State's wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. They gave them a lot of cushion. It looked like anywhere from 3 to 5 yards every single play. And it wasn't like they just only played zone or only played man, but like, I think if you're going to be able to win this football game, you got to be a little bit more aggressive with your attention towards Jamari Thrash. He is accounting for 1/3 of Louisville's quarterback's passing yards in Jack Plummer. Also, half of his touchdown passes. Jamari Thrash currently has 6 touchdowns. Jack Plummer has thrown 13. Now, Duke, to the same token, over the course of the season has been really good defending the pass. Defending right around for 5.4 yards per pass, number 5 in the country. If Thrash gets going, the concern would be, if you're Duke, that the rest of Louisville's offense starts to open up. And if that happens, maybe you see Duke overcompensate a little bit and you kind of get that run game going if you're Louisville back underneath. Also, Jamari Thrash, I think it's a very real possibility that he just ends up being the game breaker. Like in a situation like this where you're at the crib, ranked matchup, Really good ACC, tough opponent coming in. Like, you just go to your dog. It's not the same situation, but it kind of reminds me of the Ohio State-Penn State game we were at last week. Back and forth, physical outfits. They just went to Marvin Harrison Jr. He just took over the game. Jamari Thrash, I think, could be that for Louisville in this game. Now, if Louisville isn't able to kind of get him rolling the way that they want to, I think Duke potentially then makes Louisville a little bit more one-dimensional, and you could force Jack Plummer to be the one to beat you. You put the pressure then on Jack Plummer without his go-to guy, without the best playmaker, to be the one to create points for Louisville. And as good as Jack Plummer has been at times for Louisville, especially in that Notre Dame game, he's thrown 8 interceptions so far. That's not good for Louisville. That would be a world you would want to live in if you're Duke. That could be the difference maker, because if you give Duke extra possessions, by nature of how they operate offensively, you may not see the football for a little bit and can make this a rock fight. I don't think Louisville wants to get into a rock fight, and Duke, I think, would be favored if it was a rock fight. Now, when it comes to the rock fight, the battle at the line of scrimmage is going to be enormous, because for Duke, I think they have to find a way to be multiple offensively. They're a 56% run operation, and Louisville's been great against the run. So there's a world here where Duke just ends up finding something they like in the run game, and they end up winning the line of scrimmage, and that's the way that this thing goes, is Duke just kind of bulldozes their way to a victory. I could see that, but again, by nature of how Louisville's played the run to this point, that feels like a less likely outcome. So if Duke's able to get something going in the run game, do they have something off the pass game? Right? I think there has to be some way to score points here if you're Duke, because I think Louisville's going to find a way to score points, especially at home. So if that's the case, this is where I get nervous about Duke. If there's not Riley Leonard playing in this football game, I don't know how you match points with Louisville. Right now, he's been reported as day-to-day. I don't know what that means. I didn't think he was going to play last week against Florida State, and then he ended up playing. If he doesn't play, you go to Henry Beelan, who's the backup quarterback for Duke, and there is not necessarily a passing game available to you when he is your quarterback. And that's not to knock Henry Beelan. Just to this point in the year, we have not seen him be consistent. I think in the second half, or not in the second half, rather, in the third to fourth quarter, middle of the third quarter, the fourth quarter, when Henry Beelan was your quarterback, the offense did something like 35 yards total, 53 yards total. I might be mixing those numbers up. Bottom line, they were not efficient offensively when he was their quarterback. They were not moving the football. So if that's the case, I really worry about, again, their ability to keep pace with this Louisville football team. I think if Louisville's run defense is there, that could end up being the difference maker. So going back to the multiple conversation around Duke's offense, can you run the ball to set up the pass? And can you run the ball to run the ball? Kind of simplistic, but I think that's the kind of way you have to play if you're Duke in this football game. Now, my guy Sam Bland is a diehard Louisville fan. He's dialed into this one. I know he is. And I think when you come away from this game, if you're Sam, if you're a Louisville fan, you would like to see Louisville make Duke one-dimensional offensively like we talked about. I think they'll do that. And you'd like to see Jamari Thrash, like we already talked about, get to make some plays in space. The thing for me, man, I think Louisville's going to respond. And I don't know that Duke, even if they have Riley Leonard, will have the output offensively to match this pass attack of Louisville. If you give Jamari Thrash space, we keep talking about him, we've really focused on him because he is the player for Louisville, in my eyes, in this game. I think that's the difference maker. I think you give him space, he's going to hurt you. So, I actually like Louisville to not only win this game, I think they cover. I think Louisville wins this football game 27-17, and the Cards stay on a course for the ACC title game. Just barreling towards Charlotte. They'll need Jack Plummer to play more efficient the rest of the way to do that. But again, we like Louisville to win this game over Duke. We like them to cover. In L&N Stadium, no less. We'll see if Jack Harlow's on hand. But something else we got to say before we get out of this segment. 2 football schools. We have now claimed them for our own as college football schools. And we don't want to hear about them being basketball schools. How's that? All right. A lot of good Duke-Louisville matchups when it comes to the hardwood, but we are now, again, claiming them with them both being ranked teams as football schools. So that'll be a lot of fun to have them a part of the operation going forward. All right, one more game to break down and get into y'all's questions. That is the beautiful part about being dialed into the live show, is getting to have this back-and-forth interaction in real time. If you're watching it after we've been live, I apologize. Come back tomorrow or on Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll get to y'all's questions then and we'll have a real good time. We got the Response Bowl here. Not responsible, but the Response Bowl. Tennessee at Kentucky. Tennessee favored by 3.5. Both teams looking to get the bad taste of a loss out of their mouth. 7 Eastern, ESPN, Kroger Field. Kroger Field, in my opinion, I've never been, from what I've heard, from what I can see on the television screen, one of the most underrated environments in all of college football. This is going to be a lot of fun. Expect that place to be rocking. Expect that place to be a little bit daunting, I think, for this Tennessee offense in the early going. They will try and make their presence felt. I'm sure Mark Stoops will make a call to action. He talked about it when they had a noon game against Florida, I believe. It was like, hey, we know our fans can get up and get after it a little bit before noon. You give them a whole runway now to 7 Eastern, look out. For Tennessee, they are trying to restabilize after that Alabama loss. And the frustrating thing, I think, if you're a Tennessee fan, is you played well enough in the early going, it felt like, to have that be the plan the rest of the way. We'll talk about what went wrong here in just a minute, and we think what's going to happen for Tennessee in this football game. But, like, you've seen it, is what I want to say. You've seen the engine revved. You've seen Joe Milton be great throwing the ball downfield. You've seen Squirrel White separate and be a playmaker for you. You've seen it. You saw it in that game. You also saw it against Texas A&M, the way they ran the football. Is that there for Tennessee in this game? We'll talk about it, and we'll see. But this is a game where you kind of try and steady yourself, kind of get your bearings, and keep on pressing forward to those big games you have in November. Now, I think this team for Tennessee has an edge to them. And I think baked into that edge that we've talked about a lot this season, that edge that they have, I think, contains some pride within being a Tennessee Volunteer. I think there's some toughness within them. Both those things combine to make for a really great response if you're Tennessee. So I'm excited to see what they do in this spot on the road. Now, for Kentucky, lost the last 2. Backed into a corner. There is nothing more dangerous than a man backed into a corner because he will do anything and everything to get out of it. I would guess there is a massive chip on the shoulder of this football team, and I would also expect them to go back to their traits. And I think their traits when it comes to what Kentucky is as a football team, physical, hit you in the mouth, we're going to run the football at you, and I think that's the first thing we got to watch at. Or the first thing we have to watch, rather, within this game is the chess game for Kentucky to get downhill running the football. Notice, I did not say Kentucky running the football downhill. The chess game within that, because for Tennessee, they have a really stout run defense. Right now, allowing 3.1 yards a carry. Kentucky's right around 5.9 yards a carry, rather, as a team. Now, Kentucky, from a run-pass ratio, right around 50-50. But what I just said with that yards per carry and what we've seen from Kentucky looking at that Florida game, they're at their best when Ray Davis is getting north and south. Are they able to do that? Because I don't think it's a thing where you just line it up, go power right, power left, like you did against Florida if you're Kentucky. I think this Tennessee defense will bring a little bit more to it. So with this conversation then around running the football for Kentucky, can you find a way to lighten the box? The way you would do that, I think quick game, 3-step drop or catch, rock, throw out to whichever receiver you want to talk about, Tavian Robinson and Berrien Brown. You would hope are both back and healthy for this game. Berrien Brown especially, we'll talk about here in a second. The perimeter pass game, get the ball to these guys in space, let them work a little bit, let them get upfield, try and attack the edges of that Tennessee defense, get them rocking and rolling. Heck, even some perimeter runs. Maybe it's outside zone. Maybe it's a little bit of that jet sweep with Berrien Brown coming across the formation. You give it to him, a little pop pass maybe, and let him work on the edges. The reason why that's so important is you get a defense rocking and rolling, it's a lot easier to get north and south because those linebackers start guessing with the motions. They start taking an extra second to read pass run. They don't trust their eyes quite as much. That would be a world that favors north and south for Ray Davis. Now, Berrien Brown, a guy that I mentioned before, going to talk about him again. He is lightning in a bottle. He has to be the pressure point for this Kentucky offense and for Devin Leary to be able to attack the perimeter of this Tennessee defense. He's so talented and so dynamic with the ball in his hands. You have to give him attention if you're Tennessee, because if you don't, he'll go 60 on you real quick. All right? Now, the keys for Tennessee to kind of combat that will be to be what I call calculated aggression. Because Tennessee, we know what they are. They want to apply pressure. They want to get downhill and attack you and hit you in the mouth. And you love that. That's your MO, baby. Like, we love being the bully if we're Tennessee. But we saw against Alabama, they did a great job sort of taking advantage of that aggression of Tennessee. Tennessee brought pressure from the edge. Jalen Milroe, little pull, put the ball in the perimeter to the tight end or whoever you want to talk about there with the perimeter pass game, and they got north and south. You want to bring pressure off the edge and try and get to our quarterback, give the ball underneath. You want to try and bring that safety down, we're going to throw it right over you. So for Tennessee, I apologize to make you relive that, but what I want to make sure we say is you can be aggressive, but you also have to have, I think, an extra thought to that big play possibility. And if you don't, you better get home. If you're able to get home and put the game on Devin Leary, then things change. And that's kind of what this conversation goes back to in my mind. You want to make it a thing where Devin Leary has to beat you. Because as talented as I think Devin Leary is overall, he has not played that way to this point in the year. And if you're not able to get home and Kentucky does get north and south, then it could kind of be a long day and you try to get that offense going into a little bit more of a chase mode, potentially playing from behind at Kroger Field in a raucous environment. Not a very suitable spot to be able to do that. Another matchup for this game. Can Tennessee have more than one wide receiver win consistently outside? And we talked about Squirrel White last week having to be the guy that kind of unlocks the rest of this Tennessee offense. And that first half of the game, I'm getting tweets saying, JD, you were right on the money with Squirrel White. He is the guy that unlocks the offense. We look good. We're rolling. And I appreciated all those, but I think within this game now, we got to have more than just Squirrel White to win outside. Because Bama saw that too after the first half. Did a great job collecting themselves, and they said, you know what? If you beat us, it's not going to be with Squirrel White. You saw Bama just try and get pressure with 4, put those linebackers way back, lived in third and long consistently, did Tennessee, so the run game's obviously got to be there as well. But they did a great job saying, you know what? Your wide receivers have to beat us. And there wasn't that Jalen Hyatt to take pressure off of a Squirrel White. There wasn't the Cedric Tillman or the Brew McCoy. There was nobody there to kind of be that counterpunch to them, or to Squirrel White, rather. And so I think Joe Milton's going to get a lot of criticism whenever this team does poorly, and he's going to get a lot of praise whenever they do well. But, like, before we criticize Joe Milton, we got to ask, was somebody else open besides Squirrel White? Because Squirrel White, I think, will get a lot of attention in this game. Kentucky, to be real, has not been great against the pass. 254 yards allowed per game, but they've been great against the run. So, again, that goes back to this conversation. If they're great against the run, as they've been to this point in the year, is Kentucky, do you have other playmakers outside separate themselves and be an option for Joe Milton? Because if you can get something going in the pass game with Squirrel White and somebody else, then that box loosens up, much like we talked about with Kentucky and what they want to do defensively. So, if they can't do that, then you go into a rock fight. We talked about it with Duke and Louisville. I think it's the same thing here with Tennessee and Kentucky. If you can't throw the football, it might be a game kind of like Texas A&M where you need a score from special teams or you need the defense to make a play to kind of get you in, the red zone right away and be able to get points that way. I don't think you want to live that way. I think Tennessee wants to run the football first and throw the ball second, but you have to be able to have somebody else get open after you run the football effectively, if they can run the football effectively against this Kentucky front. So, when I look at this game, I think both these outfits in Kentucky and Tennessee, man, I think they're a little bit more similar than maybe we even realize. I think they're both tough up front. I think they both run the ball when they're at their best. We've seen that from Kentucky being like a 54% run team. We talked about Kentucky and what they do when they're right around 6 yards a carry with Ray Davis. Like, the rosters, in my mind, shape up to be right around equivalent. Maybe not the same, but I think they're equal in terms of how they match up. So in a game like this, when you have a lot of things that are a wash from a matchup perspective, it sounds cliche, but it comes down to the quarterbacks. And in a spot like this, with your back against the wall for both sides of this operation, Devin Leary at Kentucky and Tennessee's Joe Milton, you have to be the differentiator. Have to be the differentiator. And to me, a game like this just screams by any means necessary for your quarterback. By any means. Whether it's running the ball for a first down and laying your body out there, whether it's a scramble to check it down and keep a drive alive, whatever it looks like for this game, I think the quarterback will make that play. Now, we're not going out on a limb there so much to say that, but I think to the same token, you could see the quarterback lose the game in this one. I think turnovers could very, very easily be the difference maker for either side of this thing, as they typically are in a football game. So the quarterback, again, whatever it is, whatever play it is, I think they have to be the differentiator when it comes to this spot, with both teams wanting to play the same style to a degree. So I think that the Tennessee run game will actually find a way to get rolling in this one. We talked about A&M and the way that they were going to present some problems for Tennessee running the football, and then Josh Heupel did what Josh Heupel does, schemed up some winners, created space, and put them in conflict, and ran the football really effectively. I think you'll see that same kind of approach in this game, and I think with Kentucky, they're gonna have an effort to run the football. I think they'll still have some plays they make running the ball, but I think Devin Leary, what he's shown to this point in the year, makes me nervous to pick Kentucky in this spot, even at home. I don't trust him to be the guy, if it comes down to quarterback play, for him to win the football game. So, when it comes to our winner in this one, I think it's close. I think Tennessee ends up winning 27-23. So if you're keeping track at home, if it's 3.5 still, then we like Tennessee to cover. But bottom line, I think it's close. I think it is a gritty performance from both sides. It's going to take an edge from Tennessee to win this one, but I think they get it done. And what that would do for Tennessee now injects just a ton of adrenaline to what you have the rest of the way. You still got UConn, but you start to take a peek over at that game at Missouri, that game where Georgia comes to town. That November back-to-back is going to be very, very impactful, to say the least, for Tennessee and how they remember this season when it's all said and done. So we like Tennessee to win. Should be a really, really good game. Should be a physical game. And we say this at the end of every prediction, it feels like, but can't wait to watch it. We make no apologies for that. Cannot wait to watch it. Can't wait to watch all these. We say this a lot, too, when it comes to slates like this. Like, it doesn't have the juice of, like, a bunch of top 10 matchups. It doesn't have a bunch of, premier brands in the sport that are going toe-to-toe. It doesn't have that Week 4 juice. But still, man, if you don't think Week 9 is watchable, I don't think anyone watching this show is saying that. And you maybe have friends saying that. Don't listen to them. Friends telling you that the college football slate isn't any good aren't really your friends, all right? I hate to be the one to break that news, but I think we all got to get aligned to be on the same page as we move forward and try and finish this season strong. Golly, it's like vinegar saying finish the season. I hate that. Hate that so much. Season's not over. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to have a blast. Get in your questions right now. About to welcome on Nick Break. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you about Roback. Okay, so I'm going to do this ad read, and then we're going to go to your questions. So get those in right now so we can answer those efficiently. All right? So Roback is bringing y'all the hard count today, and y'all that have tuned into any of the content that we've done here for any extended period of time, you know that I wear Roback a lot. There's a reason for that. Roback is a brand for the people, by the people, and they get us as college football fans. So they have the best polos on the market. They have great moisture-wicking T-shirts. I don't know if T-shirt's the right word. Performance shirts, rather. You got performance crew necks, like whatever you need for football season. As we move into like this kind of more fall part of the year where you got to have something to make sure you're good when it comes to the crispier times of the year, Roback's got you covered. Moisture-wicking technology, four-way stretch makes it easy to move while keeping you feeling fresh. That's polos. It's also the moisture-wicking technology they have with the everyday shorts. They're perfect pairing. They're comfortable, have elastic waistband, have great fabric that is made to stretch. Roback also been proudly leading the charge when it comes to NIL. They've signed partnerships with guys like Cade Klubnik, Kyle McCord, Nick Singleton, Jalen Milroe, Audric Estime, all those college stars, as well as teamed up with the legendary Coach O. So use code JD on roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers. Okay, so code JD, 20% off for all new customers. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, the hoodies, which are a game changer, quarter zips. You'll get right with Roback. So again, use code JD to get that done with a nice little discount. Just in time for football season, or the end of football season, rather, the last third of football season, the home stretch, fourth quarter, put them up, fours. Make sure to check them out at roback.com. And we're not just reading that ad to read that ad. Like, that is real life. Roback is a company we've been involved with for a long time, and they get us as college football fans. I don't know what else to say. All right, to break down now your thoughts, feelings, concerns, your questions, your predictions, all that in a bag of chips, bringing on the producer, pride of Owensboro, Kentucky, Nick Break. Nick, how we doing, big dog? It's a big day. You're looking good. Big kickball game coming up. Like, what's the vibes over there, man?
There's a lot of people asking good questions today. It's one of those days where I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I ask? Which ones do I go for?
A good problem to have, though.
It's a great problem.
To have.
Yeah, JD. I'm happy to be here, man. Like you said, a big game tomorrow, playoffs.
How are we feeling for that one? I know we got a lot of questions, but how are we feeling for that one? People want to know.
I feel good. So we're the 5 seed, play the 12. Everyone knows if you're a college basketball fan, that's a dangerous game to be in if you're the 5 seed.
Yeah.
If we win that, we play immediately following. So I might be playing 2 games of kickball tomorrow night, 14 innings. I'll be a little tired on Thursday.
5 versus 12, you said?
5-12, yeah, we're the 5 seed.
Hey, we'll see that now, too, in the college football playoff here next year. So
let's go.
We'll see what the 5-12 looks like when it comes to, I guess, New Year's Madness. But March Madness, like you said, you don't want to be that 5 seed. I'm with you, Nick. But, hey, it's still a good seeding. You fought for that seeding hard. You went 4 for 4 to get that seeding. So I'm excited for you. I'm starting you in prize picks as well.
Hope you know,
I took the more on everything I could find for your numbers here.
As you should, man. We'll have to get that on the show tomorrow. First question, JD. This one's from Javier Rivera. Assuming Florida State's in the ACC championship game, what are some sneaky teams that could potentially wiggle their way into the championship? We talked earlier about Louisville and Duke. That game might honestly be like early semifinal game, JD. But anyone else you think about? North Carolina, are they done? What do you think, JD?
Yeah, I think North Carolina is probably the one that I wouldn't want to see there if I was Florida State, just because you have like the star power of Drake May, and anytime he's on the field, like, you have a chance if you're North Carolina, and Tez Walker's starting to roll. And so this whole game they played last week against Virginia, that kind of knocks you down a few rungs if you're North Carolina. But, I mean, I think that's the team I wouldn't want to see if I was Florida State. We've already picked Louisville to be our team to get to Charlotte. So I think Louisville's still that team in my mind. We like them to win this week, like them to keep rolling in ACC play. But I guess keep rolling, to get back on track, rather, in ACC play. I think they end up in Charlotte. I think it's either North Carolina or Louisville. And both, I think, present interesting problems for Florida State. But, yeah, Florida State's probably that team that you lean on right now to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Javier should feel pretty good about his Seminoles making that game. This next comment, this is something I just wanted to shout out, because this is one of the funniest comments I've ever seen. B-Rad, not Brad, B-Rad says, and he's a Georgia fan. Everyone's talking down about Georgia. Says, I love laughing at you peasants from the mountaintop. I can smell your tears when there's a strong wind. That's not very humble, but it is quite poetic.
Golly.
As you said.
B-Rad from Malibu's Most Wanted.
Yeah.
Good for him, man.
Absolutely.
I didn't know he watched the show.
Yeah.
Shout out B-Rad.
Pretty
Dude,
cool.
Yeah, I mean, the trash talk is really, in my opinion, is second to none when it comes to college football fans, especially college football Twitter. Like, I don't think there is enough credit given to how funny college football Twitter is. Like, Vern Funquist from Saturday Down South, Chris Marler, he spearheads that operation. Like, yeah. I mean, a lot of it, I would say, is view at your own risk when it comes to college football Twitter and some of the jokes that are made. But, yeah, it's funny. They got some good content there when it comes to CFB Twitter, Nick. That's right in line with that in our live chat.
I'm going to have to check that out, JD. This question, Gavin has been asking this. Gavin and Jesse have asked these 2 questions, so I'm going to make sure I get to them. They've been putting them in a lot. First from Gavin, Carson Beck has 2,000 yards and is #1 team in the country. How is he not a major Heisman contender?
I think the thing for that is the Heisman in so many ways is about the stage that you're playing on. In Georgia, they'll have their bigger stages towards the end of the year, which, to be real, if you're rooting for Carson Beck or have a future on Carson Beck to win the Heisman, that's how you want it to shape up. I mean, same thing for J.J. McCarthy. He's not getting the Heisman buzz, though. He's balling. Like, they're going to play their big games the last 3 games of the year. So if you're not getting the Heisman buzz right now, quite honestly, like, the thing that I would say if I'm a fan of a team with a Heisman contender, we think on our roster who's going to be a Heisman contender, rather, that's not in the conversation yet, I would say, good. Keep it that way. You don't want to win the race in October. You don't want to be ahead of the pack in October. It's not a bad thing, but it's not an October award. It's a November award. So I think Carson Beck, if he keeps doing what he's doing, especially without Brock Bowers, that's going to actually help his candidacy, in my opinion, because you won't split votes to that degree. So watch out for Carson Beck down the stretch. I think you're exactly right. I wouldn't worry that he's not in the mix so much at this point in time.
Okay. Good question, Gavin. This next one, so Jesse Adams was commenting when you were talking about Michigan, definitely on the other side of you. By the way, I did put out a poll. Is it a big deal? It was about 50-50, JD.
Yeah. Probably
Jesse
right.
was on the side that it is a big deal. Says, don't you find it convenient that 2/3 of the Michigan losses in the last 3 years were teams that could not advance week scout because they didn't know who they were going to play in the college football? At least makes you think. What do you think about that one, JD?
So the way that report was phrased, they actually did try and scout teams for the college football playoff. What was my understanding? Now, did that actually happen? I don't know. Again, I just go back to you can even if you have the best game plan, you don't always win the football game. Like the game is determined by the people that are on the field. And so as much as it is an advantage to have signs and to steal signs, that definitely should be punished. There should be consequences, but I don't think it's a thing where we're talking about Michigan in a different light if Connor Stallions doesn't go to the Game Time app and get a bunch of tickets to Big Ten games. I really just think Michigan has been dominant on the line of scrimmage, and that's been what has won them football games. They've got a great quarterback in J.J. McCarthy this year, and that's been the catalyst for them at the end of last year as well. I don't see the reason to just body Michigan because they stole signs. It's illegal for sure, but Nick, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this because you are also an NFL fan. If it's legal in the NFL, and I understand both sides of the game in that sense get to have the opportunity to steal signs in the NFL game, but if it's legal in the NFL, how much of an advantage is it really to steal signs, right? Are we really sure that this is the leap we want to make to Michigan cheating is the reason why they're winning football games? I'd have a hard time getting behind it, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, it's not changing the fact that their offense is scoring almost 50 points every week, right?
Yeah. I mean, I promise you, Michigan State, now Michigan State's down bad, it is what it is, but Michigan State 100% changed their signs because of what Michigan was doing. 1,000% this week they changed their signs. Now, is that a disadvantage to have to change your signs? Is Michigan down bad, or is Michigan State down bad like we just said a second ago? All that's true, but if the signs were the difference, Michigan's record I don't think would be any different. That's kind of the hill I'm on right now, Nick. Now, if we get more information, we'll talk about it and break it down and all that. But again, the way things are and the way things seem don't always align. Yeah, I think that's the case here.
Absolutely. This next question from Evan. Do you think OSU has an elite defense, or was Penn State overrated? Also, no need for an apology for doubting Ohio State. I doubted you as well.
That's good stuff. So to give you some backstory there, we don't do a live show on Sunday mornings. We do a ton of content on Sunday mornings, though, so that's another reason to be subscribed here so you don't miss the content we do about your team from the day before. Ohio State, it's well documented. I did not pick them to beat Penn State. Go to that game in Columbus. Ohio State convincingly beats Penn State. Come back here Sunday morning, have just an honest conversation with y'all, give you an apology. So go check that out. It's on my socials as well now at JD Piquel on Twitter and Instagram. Does OSU have an elite defense? From what I saw, man, a couple of things to be said. If that game's not in Columbus, I think Drew Aller plays better. I think that's true. I would also say Ohio State defensively brought the juice on the line of scrimmage. And if they didn't bring it, Penn State would have exposed them. If Ohio State didn't have it up front, we would have found out in that game. And so I think Ohio State absolutely is trending towards an elite defense. I think the personnel they got on the back end, too, the way they've upgraded there via the portal, is starting to pay dividends. JT Tuimoloau, for whatever reason, must just see red when he sees that Penn State uniform because he balled out yet again. I really love the way they're built up front, and I love the way that they're playing within this scheme now. I think that's also something to keep in mind, and Ryan Day's mentioned it. We talked about it in the offseason. It's a hard defense to learn under Jim Knowles. Very complex, very counterintuitive. It's a difference between knowing what to do and instinctively reacting within your assignment to what has to happen playing football within that defense. Does that make sense? So I think they're kind of taking that next step schematically. And to give you a direct answer, yes, I think Ohio State is trending personnel-wise and production-wise towards a very elite defense.
JD, there are so many questions. We're running low on time.
Man.
Get 2 more. Are we good with that?
You read my mind. You read my mind. 2 more is perfect.
If I'm not getting to you guys today, Prediction Tuesday, usually the busiest day question-wise. Come tomorrow, come Thursday, get your question in. If you ask it more than once, chances are I'm going to get to it. This is not one of the questions, but Chad Hayes said, JD, can you break down a scenario to take place in order for the Gators to make the college football playoffs? Oof. I think they need Thanos to snap and delete half the teams in college football for that to work? Is there another idea, another way, JD?
That would move the needle.
It would.
If Thanos did a little snap action for him. Man, you'd have to win the SEC. So whatever goes into that, winning the SEC, you'd have to have Penn State probably drop another game to Ohio State. You'd have to have Ohio State lose to Michigan, have to have Michigan lose to Penn State and probably to somebody else. Like, there's a lot of scenarios here. It would take a lot for Florida to find their way in. But let's just focus on this game against Georgia. If they beat Georgia, how about this? We'll circle back to that conversation this time next week in the live chat.
Then.
So let's be the defending champs. Let's take down the big dogs. If we're Florida, you do that, maybe we can try and dig our way into a path, because right now it's buried behind a lot of other teams, and Georgia being one of those teams. So that's where we fall on that right now, Nick.
This next question's from Dr. I would say it's Base Beats, but it could be Bass too.
Ooh, okay.
This is a team I think who has a little bit more of a chance for college football playoffs, JD. Who needs to lose for Texas to make the college football playoffs? He's asked it a lot, so I need to make sure I get to it.
Yeah, hey, the good news for Texas is they don't need anybody to lose. They just need to beat Oklahoma. So I guess the direct answer to that question would be Oklahoma, but the loss needs to be to Texas in the Big 12 title game. If Texas wins out, including a win over Oklahoma in Jerry World, they will be in the dance. So the good news is you don't actually need anybody to lose that you're not playing if you're Texas. Now, that becomes a little bit more difficult with the conversation around Quinn Ewers. At the time of us being live right now, still no timetable for what's going on with his return. Reported that it's not season ending, but Malik Murphy, Arch Manning, both taking 1 reps right now during the week. Steve Sarkisian said Malik Murphy, if there was a game yesterday, he would have been the starter. We'll see, man. We'll see. But that's the task right now for Texas. Just win and you're in is the way that I'm looking at this thing if I'm a Longhorn fan.
Sounds good, man. Okay, so like I said, one more question.
Let's do
Jack
it.
Johnson, King Epic, a lot of other people. I didn't get to your questions. Please come back tomorrow, like I said. Same time, same place.
Heck yeah, Jack Johnson.
The last question, I have to ask you this one because this is one that hits close to home for you. Joshua Hinkle says Cornell Princeton this weekend. Big matchup in Ithaca.
Oh, man.
What's your prediction?
Oh, man. Well, hey, this is a great question, so I appreciate this. Before we do this, though, hey, Nick, thank you, brother. You're the man. You're the absolute man. We'll do this again tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll do it tomorrow.
Incredible. Nick Brake, heavy lifter extraordinaire, keeper of the queue. Everything you see here, Nick Brake making it happen. All right, Cornell, Princeton. Listen, Princeton, we don't believe in transitive property, but they lost to Brown a couple of weeks ago. Cornell took Brown out back and just gave them a good old-fashioned beatdown. All right, wasn't even close in Ithaca. So, by the way that I'm looking at this thing, I like Cornell's chances to be able to beat Princeton. Now, there's a lot of talk, too. You're seeing a lot of these guys from Ivy League schools jump in the transfer portal. And I've had a couple people say, well, JD, is there a culture problem at some of these schools? There's no culture problem. The rules state that you can't play as a graduate student at these different schools. So they make it really difficult. You have to unenroll and you have to take a semester off, and then you got to come back for another year. Like, it's very tedious to be able to play 4 years if you don't get your red shirt, or if you have a red shirt year, and a lot of these guys do because of the COVID season. Bottom line, give me Cornell, give me them by 100 points, and the Big Red will keep on rolling with 1 loss in conference play. Hey, we love y'all, man. We cannot say that enough. We love y'all for being tuned in. We love y'all for being a part of this. We appreciate y'all being dialed in here. Everyone that has sent me program wins via my social channels, again, we're going to pick a few of those and send y'all some shirts. And we're glad to have you here. We're glad to have you here. Be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Got our top 10 teams for you, breaking down everything and anything that's going on within this college football world. And we appreciate y'all being a part of it, man. Y'all make it what it is. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.